Island.
Madam Speaker, I rise today and offer initial reactions from the official opposition on Nova Scotia's 2025-2026 provincial budget. It's been difficult since 2020 to find new ways to describe the types of uncertainty that we have collectively faced from every constituency in Nova Scotia to the global stage. Together, we have faced the COVID pandemic, supply chain challenges and inflation, conflict in the Ukraine, Gaza, and elsewhere, and now political and economic instability with the U.S. Nova Scotians are reeling. It's been 5 years of unexpected global crises, most with direct social and financial impacts for our province. Here, this volatile period has been marked by deep concern about the challenge for many to have access to the bare minimum of shelter, food, and housing. I know we've all been on the doorsteps. I know we've all been in public meetings, and we've all heard from folks via email and phone. We are privileged to have Nova Scotians share their deepest concerns with us. They worry about lack of access to health care for themselves, their children, and their aging parents. There is a palpable fear about whether families can afford or keep their housing. And we all experience rising costs at the grocery store. It's not just individual experiences. We have seen rising income inequality in our province. The child poverty rate in Nova Scotia increased 16% between 2021 and 2022, representing almost a quarter of Nova Scotia's young people. These aren't just the challenges of the few, but for all of us. We all Nova Scotians, certainly want better for all and a period of stability, but that's not where we are. So we need to work together. Nova Scotians expect that their government will act in their interests. The presentation of a fiscal plan is one way the government can map out a pathway to social and economic stability. Citizens look to government budgets to understand how the government will take action through programs and services in ways to ensure all Nova Scotians have their rights to education, health, housing, and more respected and realized. Citizens look at a budget to tell them what the future may look like in terms of population levels, debt management, and more. Speaking of the promises we need to keep for the future, this budget misses the mark in key areas. As the threat of Trump's tariffs hang over Nova Scotia's heads, this budget is a missed opportunity to ensure everyday people have the support they need with a comprehensive plan to protect jobs, ensure access to primary care, and provide immediate protections for renters. We will be providing in-depth comments on the budget during the session. At this moment, I will highlight some questions and concerns and gaps in key areas. In healthcare, we saw the release of a bold capital plan, and yet we still don't have a public contract in place or an extended financial plan for the rebuild of the QE2. It sits within my riding, so I either bike past it, walk past it, or drive past it probably every day. And I can tell you that this is not just simply the start of a project. There is major work being undertaken. And it seems like with a generational investment in healthcare infrastructure in Nova Scotia, we all need to know how much it's going to cost, and we all need to know that we're getting value for money. And we still don't see the whole plan for increasing primary care attachment. Wouldn't it be bold, for instance, if this budget talked about how many collaborative care centres will open this year in Nova Scotia and attach a price tag to them? In housing, of course, public housing investments are important and are part of the puzzle, but more can be done. We can keep people in the housing they have through rent control and make entry-level home ownership accessible. We continue to miss the mark in terms of making investments into housing people can afford. In gender-based violence, we do see the government adopting a whole government approach, but yet there doesn't seem to be any additional investments being made to make a transformational difference. Nova Scotians in mental health, Nova Scotians were told that there would be universal mental health in this province. This meant a lot to people, that they or the people they care for would be able to access the right service at the right time from the right service or clinician. People want to know that whether there is a need to support the onset of anxiety or if they are in suicidal distress, that the system will respond, coordinate, and accompany people on paths to wellness. In this year's budget, there is an investment of $10 million towards the small piece of universal mental health care that is providing public funding for private clinicians. However, again, while this program is supposed to be operational on April 1st, there's no details. We don't know how much of that $10 million is going to an RFP for a private sector administrator, or how much is being allocated for coalitions to actually see Nova Scotians. The budget notes our continued commitment as a province to inclusive education and, of course, to addressing violence in schools. However, while the government business plan indicates continued support in these areas, we don't see the investments needed to make a difference. And in natural resources and economic development, all I can say is that finally, this government is starting to address economic development. We welcome a conversation about the economic health of this province. We have known that we need an economic growth plan for Nova Scotians. Across the province, people have shared with us their concerns about the lack of rural employment opportunities for young people, and stagnant wages and productivity. Imagine if this government has started taking economic development seriously in 2021 and built on the foundation of population growth rather than take a free ride on the unexpected revenues that the population generated. So yes, let's talk about economic development. And we are going to be asking questions about proposed resource development plans. Economic analysis should weigh the costs and benefits of a proposed project or approach to determine if the resources are being used appropriately, to select the best course of action, to evaluate the impact of events on the economy, and to analyze market trends. In short, what can make a difference in the lives of Nova Scotians now, and what investments can be made going forward? One investment in this budget is an increase to the Nova Scotia Loyal budget, and that's not clear how that will be used without outcome data from its weak implementation to date. According to this government, only some Nova Scotians seem trusted to take part in this conversation. Hear, hear. But we will be convening and listening to all Nova Scotians. Hear, hear. Mi'kmaq leaders have already made their concerns clear about how these conversations will take place in Mi'kma'ki. The speech from the throne stated, "We allow sectors of the economy to be captured by special interests." I'm not totally sure who is all captured in that characterization, but I don't think it stands up to the type of citizen engagement we all need and we all have a right to. We can't simply ignore the complexity of issues when one choice means that an issue is supported and another may not be, and especially when opportunities in different sectors bump up against each other. It's not you and them, it's us together, balancing the questions of equity, sustainability, and prosperity. This government started out in 2021 with an ambitious piece of legislation setting environmental goals. What do we know now of our progress towards these goals, towards managing climate change and lessening the negative effects on Nova Scotians? We are also deeply concerned by this government's ill-informed view of the social and structural determinants of health. To imply that poverty of imagination perpetuates the cycle of poverty is to ignore the effects of centuries of ongoing inequality and disparity on the basis of gender, race, religion, socioeconomic status, disability, and more. Preach. Indeed, on an individual level, I imagine that many people facing the day in and day out grind of trying to provide the best for their families can in fact imagine a life with less systemic barriers and less systemic traps. Collectively, I believe that we are all working for a province without poverty. We can do this by thinking through what is needed to overcome prejudice and limitation in services and resources so that all Nova Scotians can have a decent life. An example of where we're missing the mark, to date, this government continues to put forth a vision for economic development in Nova Scotia that is gender blind. For instance, with increases to the MOST program in this budget, this government continues to ignore the well-documented barriers to women and gender-diverse folks in many of the targeted industries and maintaining the age limit of 30. And that includes people who have the later entry to the profession, as well as documented intolerable levels of gender-based violence and harassment in the sectors. We also need to look at the revenue side of the ledger. During its first mandate, the PC government relied on unexpected population growth and larger than forecast federal transfers to bring revenue into the government. This approach did little to put money in the pockets of everyday Nova Scotians or help folks access what they needed in terms of housing, groceries, and other necessities. We need clarity and transparency on where this government will get the money to pay for what we need. Nova Scotians expect stringent financial management. We've been concerned about this government's inability to budget accurately, leading to overspending outside of the legislative process, away from the democratic process. And this is a practice that the government doesn't seem to be concerned to reckon with, despite standing out amongst all other provinces and repeated warnings from the Auditor General. We also need to look at the ways in which government manages our money. This budget creates a contingency in order to be ready for tariffs. This in itself is a good move in this time of uncertainty. However, what's not clear is how this contingency will be used, how it will be accessed, and it does add a lot to our long-term debt. As well, public procurement is an important and different process than making decisions in other sectors. Public procurement has developed out of goals to keep people safe and secure in the products and buildings that government develops, to make sure that we get value for money, and to make sure that the benefits of government spending don't just end up in the hands of friends, but are accessible opportunities for all qualified businesses. And yet, as per the Auditor General's reports, much of the spending done outside the budget and with alternative procurement lacks rigor. Surely having contracts in place is the bare minimum fiduciary responsibility of government. We will ask critical, and by that I don't mean negative, but rather analytical questions about proposed investments. We will also listen to and work with all Nova Scotians. This includes scientific leaders building evidence based on research. This includes Mi'kmaq leaders and communities in unceded Mi'kma'ki. This includes public interest groups who consider how to best achieve the goals of our province: sustainability, equity, and accessibility. And this includes communities who have observed and experienced issues as a collective and who want to share that. We need to know the concerns of youth and seniors and everyone in between. We need to hear from frontline service providers, medical professionals, educators, entrepreneurs and investors, and more. And of course, municipalities are important partners. All of these perspectives, these interests, all of us, this is Team Nova Scotia. We believe that this government needs to earn and keep the trust of its citizens, not dismiss Nova Scotians' perspectives. We will continue to review the government's proposed budget alongside stakeholders, alongside Nova Scotians, to understand how it will help Nova Scotia meet the pressures of today and realize the promises of tomorrow. We believe in the full promise of our name, Nova, meaning new and the birth of a star. It was never about no, but instead, Nova represents a way forward of equitable, sustainable existence in Mi'kma'ki. Surely this is the future we should build together as a province. At this time, I move that we adjourn debate on budget address.